The National Institute of Health says more than 60 million Americans experience heartburn at least once a month, with other studies saying that 15 million Americans get heartburn every single day. So what can you do to help your symptoms and find some relief? Let's ask the expert this afternoon. Dr. Natasha Bhuyan with One Medical is here. So what are some of the symptoms, first of all, of heartburn, doctor?
Well, most people think that heartburn is a burning sensation in your chest, and that's true for many people, but it can be so much more. You know, some people actually develop a cough and they think it's postnasal drip or they think it's allergies, and it actually ends up being heartburn. Other people will get nausea, a sore throat, even a bitter taste in their mouth. And so if anyone has these vague symptoms that are kind of unclear, I tell people track when the symptoms are actually happening. Is it after meals? Is it worse at night? Because if that's the case, it might actually be heartburn.
Okay, instead of the common cold, which is kind of what it sounds like.
Exactly. It can be confused with other things.
Okay. What are some causes of heartburn? I did know spicy foods, which is first on our list.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, it's interesting. The old school thinking is that spicy foods and citrus foods are the #1 causes of heartburn. And that can be true for some people, but the newer evidence we're finding is that heartburn can be really triggered by lots of different things. So for some people, it might be things like fried food or carbonated beverages. For other people, it might be tomatoes or onions. And so it's really individualized. We do know that alcohol and coffee tend to be really common culprits, and that's because they kind of relax that lower esophageal sphincter, and so acid can jump into the esophagus. You know, other things though, stress is actually a huge trigger and a cause for people. And then, you know, when I was pregnant, a lot of women in pregnancy, they do have heartburn as well, and it felt like every food I ate was a trigger. So again, the causes can be really variable.
So then when we talk about ways to prevent heartburn, it might be different, especially if we're talking about pregnant women experiencing, so be careful about what steps you take for prevention.
Exactly, yeah. For prevention, the #1 thing I tell people is keep a food diary. Determine what your own triggers are, and then of course minimize and try to avoid those foods. And then the other good advice is making sure that you eat smaller meals and chew slowly. We are always on the run. I don't think I know anyone that chews their food 32 times, but it does make a difference.
Right, that's what we've been told since the beginning.
Exactly, it's good advice, especially for heartburn. And then before you go to bed, make sure you're not eating food right before bed. That can trigger heartburn as well. Sleep with the head of the bed elevated if you do have heartburn, because that again avoids the acidity in your esophagus. And then the other big way to prevent heartburn, losing weight does make a difference because it kind of alleviates that pressure on the digestive system.
Okay, diet and exercise always a factor in staying healthy, certainly. Let's talk about a little bit of some of the natural remedies that are available.
Yeah, so you know, so many people want to avoid medications for heartburn, which I think is great advice. One thing people can try is apple cider vinegar. This is a little controversial.
I was going to say, wait, what?
It's acidic, and so you think that it would actually make heartburn worse. It does for some people, but for many people, the apple cider vinegar can actually restore good bacteria into the gut. It can help with digestion. The other trick is bananas. Bananas are so interesting. They have a thing called pectin, and so it actually is a soluble fiber. It can also help with digestion. It does make a difference. And then baking soda is an old remedy that people use. So even just half a teaspoon, mixing it in with a half a cup of water.
Okay.
People should not do that every single day because there are side effects of taking baking soda every day. But if you need it as needed, maybe once a week, it's okay to try. But my favorite is actually sugar-free chewing gum after a meal. It stimulates saliva production, and that's really great at neutralizing acid. It's the best home remedy I can think of for heartburn.
And inexpensive. I mean, that's probably the cheapest option. Well, baking soda is pretty fair price,
yeah.
I'd say. I use that for carpet cleaner.
Yeah, and there's a couple others. I mean, there's ginger, licorice, other things people can try. It's mixed evidence, it's hit or miss, but I tell people it's worth a shot, and if it helps you avoid meds, it's great to try.
And before we go, let's talk about the medications. If people are more opting for that option to avoid a heartburn, what can they use?
Yeah, you know, so many people take proton pump inhibitors. So think of things like Prilosec and Nexium. I think 15 million people take those. I have to be honest, I don't love those medications. If people take them long-term every single day, they have a lot of side effects because essentially they're preventing your stomach from absorbing important nutrients like iron or B12. And people who take those meds regularly can increase their risks of fracture or even infection. And so yes, there are meds out there, but if you can avoid them, that's the best option.
Yeah.